The brain consists of 13 main areas, each being different and unique with their own functions. I think it's important that you know these parts and what they do. So let's begin. I think it is important to note that the brain is split first off into 4 major areas called lobes: the temporal, frontal, parietal, and occipital lobe. But what do they actually do? Well, that is what I'm here to explain: these lobes and all the other parts of the brain. So let's dive in.
First off is the frontal lobe. It's the biggest of the bunch. It has the primary motor cortex, which sends messages to your body telling it to move. Like when you hear loud noises, you cover your ears. It also controls working memory, like remembering things that have happened recently. Part of the left side is dedicated to producing words and learning a language. It's called the Broca's area. It is important to note that the frontal lobe does not fully develop until age 25. There have been studies done that show that people won't make the same decision 10 years later. Who knew? Next is the temporal lobe. This section is in charge of hearing, but also memories, emotions, and speech. The top part of this lobe is what is called the Wernicke's area. It is focused on actually understanding speech and language. You hear all these sounds, and the Wernicke's area makes sense of it. On the top of the brain is the parietal lobe. This lobe is the most complex, but it makes sense why. It is dedicated to pressure sensors all over the body, or in simple terms, touch. If you prick your finger on a needle, then this is the part of the brain that is responsible for feeling it. Lastly, the occipital lobe. It is the smallest and simplest lobe. All it does is control vision. If damaged, then vision loss may occur and/or becoming blind, as it is usually referred to. Now that we are done with the lobes, it's time to talk about the other areas in the brain. Let's start with what connects the left and right side of the brain. By this, I mean the corpus callosum, and its function is that it connects the 2 hemispheres of the brain, allowing information to be transferred between the 2 sides. Another important area is the brainstem. It is the bridge between the brain and body. It sends messages to other parts of the body, allowing it to function properly. If damaged, then simple things like breathing and having heartbeat can't happen. There are 2 main areas that make up the brainstem. First is the pons. It is in control of sleep and is the main bridge between the brain and spinal cord. There is also the medulla, which manipulates more subtle functions like breathing, heart rate, and swallowing, and a couple that are not so subtle, such as vomiting and sneezing or coughing. Not very fun. The cerebellum, which is right next to the brainstem, is really interesting. It has a couple abilities, namely motor movements. This includes being able to balance, posture, and voluntary movements, which are all learned muscle actions and are done like second nature. Alcohol and drugs can have a huge effect on the cerebellum. An example of this would be is when a person may have too much alcohol, and because of that, they are no longer able to walk in a straight line. Make sense? A really important part is the hippocampus. Its function is to make new memories. If damaged, then short-term memory may occur, and new memories aren't able to be built. The last part to go over is the thalamus. It takes in information from the senses and relays it to other parts of the brain. It's kind of like, is this piece of information important? Should I remember it?
The brain is a very complex organ and is needed to stay alive. It and the heart are the most important organs and are still being studied today. So thanks for joining me on this crazy adventure, and just remember how special this special organ is.